Breann McGregor.
All right, Craig. So, how about you tell me a little bit about you?
Well, I have been traveling around speaking most of my life, mostly in schools. I'm a survivor of the Columbine High School shooting. I was in the library the day the Columbine shooting happened, which was the room where most of the shooting happened. I had two friends that were killed next to me underneath a table. I barely escaped with my life, and then later learned that my sister Rachel Scott was the first one that was killed. And since then, I've been doing work with youth and doing work in schools to try to help create a kind, compassionate culture at schools. I went through a lot of healing. I've also had the privilege to have a platform and be able to use my story to help people now, kids that are dealing with their pain, that are dealing with their tragedies. I've heard over the years, thousands and thousands of students have told me their personal hardships and stories after presentations. My sister's story has really become famous. She was just a simple teenage girl that stepped out of her way for people that were kind of on the outside to show them kindness and compassion. And in the last moments of her life, she was with a gun with a gun at her head. She was questioned about her faith.
Hmm.
And so there's been documentaries made, books written, a movie made. And uh, so I've seen so much good: school shootings prevented, thousands and thousands of suicides prevented. In fact, I have a book of emails from over 1,000 students that over the years had contemplated suicide and then heard my sister's story, and it gave them hope. So it's
Wow.
a very inspiring story. She also kept a lot of journals. And so that's what I do for my main profession.
How old was your sister?
She was 17. She was a junior, and I was 16, a sophomore when Columbine happened. And of course, today, with kids, Columbine is history. But for anybody was old enough to remember,
Yeah.
or they were old enough, they remember exactly where they were, what they were doing, like September 11th.
Yeah, no, I definitely remember that. And these kids, the Columbine shooters, they what was their whole purpose of doing this?
So the news media painted a picture that we found later wasn't really true. And the main narrative that came, and there was so much news coverage after Columbine, and everybody wanted to know why. Why did these guys do what they did? And it was the first big mass school shooting that happened in our country. And so the narrative that was kind of painted was two guys were pushed to the edge with bullying. They were bullied so bad at school that they were going to school to get revenge. But that is really not the real story. And even psychologists that have looked into why it happened and study the shooters realize that wasn't the bigger issues. If I were to give you my answer as to why the Columbine shooting happened, as someone who lived in that town, who survived it, who's really built my life's work based on that tragedy, I would tell you the biggest reason that the shooting happened was because the shooters focused on everything that was negative in this world. They focused on negativity in this world and in themselves. And that's really why the shooting happened. Bullying was a factor. They were bullied to a degree at school. I knew kids at my school that were bullied worse, but they themselves were bullies at times. They especially kind of the leader between the two of the shooting. He wasn't a kind person at all. He was very angry. He was mean, um, and so I've learned that when talking to kids who um, I've actually met some students over the years that idolized the shooters at Columbine because they were bullied at school,
Mm-hmm.
and there's been other shootings because of that. And actually, Columbine kind of helped paint that picture in the American psyche. That's kind of the power of the news media, after Columbine, it was like, if you get bullied, then the possibility is to do a school shooting. And that's
Right.
a terrible formula. That's a terrible formula because it is absolutely unjust to go kill someone because you're bullied, to take their life. Bully getting put down, getting made fun of it's wrong, but you can survive it. In fact, I teach kids I give them tools about that, how they really can be emotionally resilient with whatever is said about them or to them, that's not where their value lies. It's not in what other people say about you. That's not where your value is.
I was
Your
gonna
value,
go on.
go ahead.
No, I was, what I wanted to ask is, what do you tell those that are being bullied? What would you say? Hey, you know, before going this far, do not take it this far. These are the steps that you can take. What would you recommend to, like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, and I meet a lot of students that have been. And so I talk to them about that in between what somebody says to you or somebody does to you and your response, in the middle is what you think about what they said to you or what they did to you. In the middle, between A and C, is B, what you think about what is said. So for example, somebody comes up to another kid and says, you're a loser, you're pathetic, and like just says all these negative things. Between a lot of times before our emotions, we actually have thoughts. We think something and then we're angry. We think something and then we're sad. Sometimes we have just an immediate reaction to something, but most of the time our emotions are preceded by our thoughts. So somebody says that to me and I can say, I know that that person's A, insecure themselves, B, they're just trying to get a laugh from other people by making fun of me. So they're trying to get attention.
Mm-hmm.
C, they don't know how to be kind to people. They live in a home that's very negative, and this is how
I was just
they
about to
deal
ask
with
that,
people.
since you are going there, is
Yeah,
if still answer the question that I was asking before, but did you know what the home, the life, how home was for the Columbine shooters? Was it a happy home, distraught home? Was there stuff going on behind the scenes that you believe pushed these um, young
yeah,
men who
yeah,
ended up taking lives due
sure.
to their to other factors outside of what was outside of the bullying? There's a deeper, um, there's more to it at the end of the day. It stems from home, your environment. And I think that that's where I'm trying to get is, how was their environment?
Sure. Yeah. So, uh, I'll address that first, and then answer the other question.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as I know, Dylan actually had a pretty loving home. One of them. I don't know a whole lot about Eric's home life, but my mom has actually become friends with one of the shooter's mom. His name was 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀. Dylan was suicidal, and he was not actually going to go through with the shooting. And Eric kind of convinced him, and then he later on decided to go through with it. And actually, I have a program. My speaking program is called Value Up, and I actually named it Value Up because I read um, and Dylan's mom, she wrote a book, and she said, we valued Dylan, but he didn't believe in his own value. And when I read that, I realized that's something a lot of teens across the country deal with. And when somebody doesn't know their own value, when
Mm-hmm.
they don't believe that they're worth anything, if they think they're worthless, then they will allow any influence into their life,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't choose things that match their worth. They will choose negative things in their life because they don't think they're worth anything more. So a lot of times we choose things based on who we think we are, our identity, and we allow those things into our life.
Right.
So if I believe about myself that I have this incredible value, God-given, inherent, built-in value, then um, the things I allow into my life are going to match that because it matches me. So when students are facing, or anybody is facing being bullied, being put down on a regular basis by other people, you have to learn the skill of being a see-througher. That's what my dad calls it. My dad started a program called Rachel's Challenge, which is, it's the largest school assembly program in the country. And he talks to kids about being a see-througher. And what that means is when somebody says to you, look behind their words and look at that person's heart. Look behind their words, their demeanor, and see what's going on inside them. Because the truth is, if they're lashing out at you and they're saying these negative things to you, the problem isn't with you, it's with them.
Right. It's
So
a
you have to
reflection
see,
of how they feel about themselves
yeah, you have
being
to see,
portrayed onto
and a
you.
lot of times that's it. Is, you know, they're calling things because that's the way they see the world. And so
Uh,
again, between what happens to us and our response in the middle is what we think. So if somebody says all that stuff to me, that they call me a loser, they say I'm fat, they say I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, whatever the put down is, I can see through and see they have a problem, not me. And then I can also be an observer of my thoughts and be like, am I going to believe what this person is saying, or do I know that I have incredible built-in value? And that's one of the main things that I want kids to walk away with, is knowing and saying about themselves, I have incredible value. Because we all do. At any point, any person has this capacity to love, to be good, to do good things. And we have, all of us, the capacity and potential to do great things in this world. Even people who have made a lot of mistakes, and even people who have bad character at one point, you can change. I know people that actually killed people and are in prison and had a complete transformation, and they're totally different people now, and they're kind and they're humble. And so if you think you think that your value is in what other people say about you, it's not. Your value is when what you look like, it's not. Your value is not even in what you do. Your value is always there. It's built into you. You can't take it out of you. Now, to be able to show value to other people, it does matter what you do. That is dependent on what you do, how you show value to others and to the world. But your intrinsic value, it's like gold. You cannot take the value out of gold. It's always in it. It's always built in it. You could take that piece of gold and throw it in the trash. You could cover it with dirt. You could call it names. It could come from a long line of bad family gold. It's still gold. And that's like us people. We have this intrinsic built-in gold within us, and that's who we really are.
So I have a question for you. As I suffer from depression and PTSD and BDD, body dysmorphic disorder. And I know for myself, in high school, I had a really hard time having a positive outlook on life. Though at home was good, I know that I wasn't aware that I was depressed. I wasn't aware of the BDD. I wasn't aware of um, these huge factors that played a role in how I looked at myself. And I know that what would you say, that my question about Dylan and Eric, did they suffer depression or bipolar, or all these factors very much can, and I'm not giving this any justice by any means, but it can play a huge role in deciphering, okay, what how far are you going to go, how far are you not. Now there is a point where it's where one would be mentally competent and then one would not be. But in this case, they both knew what they were doing. They both fought it out. But I was wondering if they did suffer from any sort of mental ailment, and what I wanted to ask for other people. such as myself, and I'm looking at the younger Breann, what would you have said to the younger Breann, or those that are sad or feel the feelings linger daily and they're not aware of what they have? You know, it's easy to say, it's easier said than done to look at life and be positive and look at the bright side. But when you're being completely honest with yourself and you're saying, I am really sad and life sucks. Yes, I have a roof over my head. I have a bed to lay in. I have a great family, but I'm still sad. What would you say to those where there's this conflicting, these thoughts that do not go away? Because that is something that still into my adulthood, where I know with therapy and with the tools that I've learned from my psychologist throughout the years, now I know how to handle it. But back then, I didn't even know I had a problem. I just thought that that's how everybody was, but why couldn't I be happy and positive? Everyone else is, why do I continue to get these thoughts of, I'm not good enough, I'm not worth it? And even though I'm succeeding with my grades and everything else looks amazing, inside I don't feel that way. So I guess my question is, because you have talked over 1,000 different speeches that you have done with children. Have you been asked that question, and what have you and if so, what have you recommended, or what would you say to them? Because it's a lot harder.
To answer your question, we have to take control of our thought space. And to do that, we have to become an observer of our thoughts. And so what I talk to kids about that are dealing with depression, and I've dealt with depression, and everybody deals with depression at some point in their life, and it's whether we stay there, and if we stay there for extended periods of time. And so what I share with them is stuff that has helped me, and that is that when you are in a consistent state of sadness, of unrest, of depression, there might be even subconscious thinking that's going on, and you have to be honest with yourself. You have to recognize it first, recognize it, observe it, saying, this is happening in my life. Sometimes in life you won't be sad, you'll be angry all the time, and you have to stop at some point and ask yourself, why am I angry? Where is this coming from? And so once you observe your state of being and you recognize it, or you observe a certain pattern of thinking and you recognize it, then you can address it. So that's the first thing. You said when you were a teenager that you were depressed, but you weren't really aware of it. You just thought this is how existence is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first part of the battle, is really to recognize it and become aware of it and realize it's a thing in your life. And the second thing to do is for me, it's to ask myself this question: is that who I really want to be, or is that who I really am? And if the answer is no, then okay, I know that this thinking is not wanted in my life. So I want to do something to change this thinking. And so that's where a process starts. And, let's say you're in, as far as the shooters were concerned, yes, they did get to a point where you could clinically diagnose them with serious mental health conditions. Some people would call it disease at that point. Eric was psychopathic. He was a psychopath. Was he always a psychopath? No, he wasn't. If you talk to his mom, Dylan was a sweet boy and a sweet kid and a nice kid for a lot of his life. So what happened? Well, we all have to take responsibility for what's happening in here. We have to take responsibility for our thoughts and for our emotions, not just our words and our actions, but also this. And if we don't, and we latch onto the wrong things, and we feed it what we give attention to, we give in our life. And so if you're the two shooters are combined, especially through the media, especially over the internet, and through a lot of media, for them, movies, music, games, and internet, they really focused on a lot of negative stuff. So imagine you take somebody, anybody, a teenager or just a person, and you throw them in a room, and you just 24 hours, you just show them just negative, maybe even evil stuff. Okay, violent, angry. How do you think that person is going to walk out of that room? They're going to walk out. They might not go kill somebody, but they are going to be affected by that. Probably it's going to create aggression in some form in their life, because what we place our attention on, we give power to. And then, there's the other old saying that garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you are feeding off of a lot of garbage stuff, and I think today there's so much in the media, news media, social media, entertainment, and I've just, for the most part, I've turned it all off. I don't even go there. I don't really watch the news. I barely spend time on social media. The only time I spend on social media is really to share messages that I think will be helpful. But I want to go to places where I'm going to become my best self. And those aren't, in the news media, people say, oh, well, you want to stay well informed. The news media, so much of it today is built around money. And they make way more money on negative things than they do positive things. And this is from a person who's, I've been interviewed over 1,000 times. You can see dozens of videos and interviews of me over the years through media, national media, local media, and I've learned a lot about them. And so I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm not trying to paint all journalism. There's some great journalists out there. There's some great stories. But if I recently turned it off because I found it wasn't helping me in my journey at all. Yeah. So to wrap up my answer for your question, there's a few points that I would give to somebody that's struggling with depression, that's down, or struggling with any negative state of being. And that is, first, like you said, recognize it. Recognize that this is in my life. Become an observer of your thoughts. Your thoughts are not you. You are the observer behind your thoughts. You can have 1,000 thoughts cross your mind in a day. You can have a crazy thought. Have you ever had a crazy thought like, one time I was holding a baby and I was walking past a balcony, and this quick thought of like just me throwing the baby off, which I would never do. I love kids and love the baby. Would never do that. That thought is not me. For me to all of a sudden feel guilty and be like, oh my gosh, why would I ever think? No, it's just your brain just, sometimes you just have these sparks that come out of nowhere. But what you have to do is be an observer of it. And then you can say, is that me?
Or did I pick it up subconsciously listening to something, watching a movie, and in my head playing it out?
Yeah, I could have thought of Michael Jackson when he was tangling his kid over the, whatever. It doesn't all of a sudden make me, this evil person. And so what you do, you can't always control the thoughts that come in, but you can start to, some people, great poets that I've listened to and teachers have aligned the mind like a garden, and you have to tend the garden, and weeds can grow, and you have to recognize when something is a weed, and you have to pull it out by its roots, and then you have to cultivate beautiful things in your garden.